The NFC South is a weird division. We have Tampa, Atlanta tomorrow for Thursday night football. And the NFC South is weird, right? Because most divisions, if you want to be really generic or blank or bland, you can kind of just go, okay, best quarterback, best coach. And generally, that'll let you know who's the best team in the division, especially quarterback, right? Except in the NFC South, it's kind of weird. Do we really know who's the best quarterback coming out of that division? You go division by division, there's either a clear answer, or in case of the AFC North, you've got two guys, but that's because they're both arguing for top 5. In the West, it's obviously Mahomes. Who wins the division? The Chiefs. You go to the AFC South, CJ has clearly emerged as the best quarterback in that division. Who's going to win it? The Texans and CJ Stroud. You go to the East, it's Josh Allen. It's not relatively close. The AFC North is what makes it such a tough division, is it has two guys. It has Burrow and Lamar, and most people made their predictions based on who was, in their opinion, the best quarterback, either Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson. Then you go over to the NFC, and you've got in the East, Dallas has been consistently winning the division, which Dak has been the best quarterback consistently. The years the Eagles have won it, obviously, was the Jalen Hurts MVP year. You go to the North, that was Aaron Rodgers' division for years. Now Jared Goff. I know Jordan Love, I'm not ready to give him that title yet because we still only have, even with a good second half yesterday, we only have 8 good games of Jordan Love. So Jared Goff is still, in my opinion, the best quarterback in the NFC North, and the Lions are, I understand the Vikings are 4-0, but the Lions still my pick to win that division. And then, of course, you go to the NFC West. This is probably your only exception. Now, Stafford, I believe, is the best quarterback in that division, but the Niners roster is so overly talented that they've been the best team in that division the last 5-6 years. The NFC South is a year-by-year basis. Even when they had the best quarterback in that division, Drew Brees, who was in that division for over a decade, it was still consistently a different winner every single year. It's just a weird division. Carolina got there with Cam. The Falcons have had their turn with Matt Ryan. Like, it has just been one of the weirdest divisions historically to predict, and the normal best quarterback, best coach just doesn't apply to this division for some reason. Now, I picked Atlanta coming into the season. I think a lot of people did. A lot of people started to get on the Falcons bandwagon. We saw the moves they were making, especially late in the offseason, coming into the regular season. We liked the Kirk Cousins edition. Like, a lot of people loved what Atlanta did in the offseason, even if you think they had the weirdest draft pick of all 32 teams. Drafted Michael Penix, fine. You want to say it's weird, okay. But almost everything else we loved about it. Even the thing that hurt me, which is signing Justin Simmons at the end. Because, I wanted Justin Simmons to stay a Bronco. But didn't happen. Loved Atlanta's offseason. I thought the Bucs were going to be good, but kind of regress. And Baker has outright played like one of the 5 to 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL through 4 games. 3 of his 4 games, he's been fantastic. The Lions game, you could say what you want, maybe wasn't statistically fantastic, but keeping them in that game, that's a gutsy win to go into Detroit in week 2. That's one of the best wins in the NFL so far this season. His only objectively bad game was against Denver. So this is going to be huge on Thursday night, is because if we're being honest, no one's counting the Panthers in, and Andy Dalton's not up for consideration the best quarterback in that division. Is the 2 teams that are going to compete for this division are playing tomorrow, the Bucs and the Falcons. And Baker and Kirk Cousins are the 2 guys that are in consideration for the best quarterback in that division. And we're going to find out who is going to take the lead on that title for best quarterback. Because if the Bucs win and the Bucs get to 4-1, Baker continues to play the way that he has played, that's the team. And again, I don't believe in changing picks. We're going to talk about that more on Sunday, about where we stand after 4 weeks and who I feel good about, who I don't feel good about. But if the Bucs get to 4-1, Baker keeps up this level of play, that's your favorite for the division going forward. Again, I liked a lot about Atlanta did, and I think Kirk has played well, not great, but coming off an injury, I expected somewhat of a slow start anyway. But we're going to start to see this. I think we're going to get real clarity on this division. And this is a division that's never had it. Again, even when Drew Brees was in this division, it was just weird. You never really knew exactly who was going to win each year. Again, Drew Brees won, Cam Newton won, Matt Ryan won, and yes, those are all great, but they all played during the same time of each other. And then you've got years, the Saints are winning, the Falcons are winning, the Bucks are winning, the Bucks get Tom Brady and get a Super Bowl, but that's only a short span, and Tom's just an outlier in general. So we're going to start to see real clarity on who is going to take the mantle for best quarterback in this division, and that's going to start tomorrow night. Not predicting it. It'd be a game, if you're a gambling man, I'd stay away from it. Division games are funny as is unless there's a real disparity between the teams. Like, I think there's a disparity between the Chargers and Chiefs, but every time the Chargers and Chiefs play, that game's close. Denver was bad objectively last year. They played the Chiefs. They went 1-1. Division games are just weird unless there's a huge, huge disparity and one of them are just streaking in a positive direction. The other's going negative. If you're a gambling man, stay away from it. But we're going to get to see some real clarity for maybe the first time in the history of that division tomorrow night when Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins and the Falcons and Bucks play. Transitioning from that, and this story's been what's been going around the last 24 hours, is Davantae Adams' request to trade. Now, yesterday it started out as, well, Davantae Adams and Antonio Pierce, there's issues. And then it became, well, there's actually issues in the locker room, there's issues with the head coach. And then there was an Instagram post that Antonio Pierce had liked, but nobody knew if it was actually him. I've seen people say, oh, what a dumb decision by the coach. I've seen some people say, oh, why was he trolling? By about 3 p.m. yesterday afternoon, Davantae Adams had requested a trade. And now, we love this. We love when players request trades as long as they're not on our team. You never want your star player to request a trade, nor do you ever want your star player to be traded. I remember, even though Denver wasn't good, I remember when Von Miller was traded, that was a gut punch. Remember when Bradley Chubb was traded? That was a gut punch. Even if they weren't going to be on the roster when Denver finally turned it around and became good again, it was still a gut punch. So we never want our players to be traded. But when another team star player is traded, we love it. It gets conversation. It makes immediate topics. It's stuff to talk about with your friends. But I think everyone has this wrong, and I'll explain why. There's the obvious destinations I think everybody has for Davantae Adams. There's New York Jets because of Aaron Rodgers. The Saints have gotten into this conversation because of Derek Carr. The Ravens have gotten into this conversation just because they're another AFC team competitively, even though there's probably a play style mesh that's not quite there. The Ravens aren't trying to be this 20-30 pass a game kind of team. They want to run the ball, Lamar, Derrick Henry. There's a couple NFC teams. I've even seen the Niners thrown out there just because they technically, if you're viewing Davantae Adams as a 1-year rental, and if you want to get cap nerdy, he pretty much is. The Niners have the most cap because they don't pay their quarterback. But the more I started to think about it, I was like, okay, the Saints make sense. I get it. Derek Carr, that's his friend. Okay, Aaron Rodgers makes sense. They have a history there. Are we just excluding the fact that the Las Vegas Raiders, besides paying Davantae Adams, have never, quote-unquote, done right by him? Davantae Adams was traded to the Raiders because he wanted to play with Derek Carr. Raiders said, okay, and then traded Derek Carr a year later. Davantae Adams wanted to be on a competitive team, and Vegas said, look, we're building this. We're going to sell you on this game plan of why we're going to be competitive. We got you and Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels. Oh, and by the way, Josh McDaniels is fired. Oh, and by the way, now there's issues with your head coach. And we saw on receiver, Davantae Adams on the Netflix special Receiver, he was outwardly angry and upset about the way the Raiders were using him. He talked about getting hit more than he ever has in his life, the kind of routes they were having him run. And again, Davantae is one of the, even if he's no longer prime Davantae Adams is one of the best receivers in the National Football League, even if he's no longer prime. And so, I say all that to say, why do we expect the Raiders to trade him anywhere he specifically wants to go? They didn't keep the coach that he was hired on with. They didn't keep the quarterback, which is the sole reason they got him in the first place. He's a hometown from Vegas, so you should have thought that, hey, we have this prime marquee player. He's from here. We have his friend who we went to college with, played quarterback, and we just blew all that up. So why are we now supposed to expect the Raiders to turn around and say, you know what, Davantae, we're going to do right by you. We're going to make sure you go to the New York Jets because you have a history with Aaron Rodgers, or we're going to send you to the Saints because of your and Derek Carr's relationship. Yes, did the Raiders do right by Derek Carr in a sense? He had wanted to go to New Orleans because he thought he had a chance? Yes, but the history that Derek Carr had with the Raiders is vastly different to what Davantae Adams has with the Raiders. And if you thought the Raiders were going to do the right thing, wouldn't the right thing be getting rid of the current coach? I understand he's an interim and he just got there, or not even just getting rid of him, but disciplining him because he's over here liking Instagram posts about potentially trading away your star receiver? Wouldn't that be organizationally, from ownership and down below, wouldn't that be the right thing to do? I have no reason to think that the Raiders are going to do any kind of right by Davantae Adams. I have no reason to think the Raiders are going to trade Davantae even remotely to a team he wants to go to. I think the Raiders are going, I think the asking price is going to be a 3 and a 5. I've heard stuff about a second round pick, but the way Davante's contract is structured, he doesn't actually have real money these next 2 years. So if a team wants to cut him, they can. It's not going to be a huge cap hit. The Raiders will have a cap hit, but the team that cuts him afterwards won't. But I think the Raiders are going to hold out and hope that they get a couple teams offer a 3 and a 5, and that one team gets a little desperate and offers them either a 2 or a 3 and a 4. And that's where they're going to send him. And they're not going to care if that's the Jets. They're not going to care if that's the Niners, the Saints. It's going to be nothing that Davantae Adams' input and his feelings, which the Raiders have ignored extensively up to this point, are not going to be a factor whatever team he plays next. And I also think this, because I've heard the Chiefs using this, and I want to take some time to get this theory off, is they're not going to trade him to the Chiefs. Partly because that is a in-division rival and just teams generally don't trade in division. With that being said, though, I don't actually think it's a terrible idea to trade him in division. Especially if you and the team you trade with are not on the same competitive timeline. If you were to trade one of your best players while you're not very good to a team in your division that is very good, you are improving your asset pool and taking away from theirs, and because you're not on the actual same timeline, it's not going to feel like, oh, we're hurting ourselves. No, I'm going to put myself in a position where I am better when you are theoretically getting worse. And I'll even bring this up. Drew Bledsoe was traded in division. Who traded him? Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, who then went on to have the greatest dynasty in the history of the National Football League. So it can work. It's been proven to work. But again, I understand a lot of fans don't want to hear that, and a lot of teams won't do that because it is really bad PR. You trade Davantae Adams to the Chiefs, he starts catching touchdowns from Mahomes, and now your fan base goes, what the hell are we doing? But again, I don't think Davantae is going to be able to get anywhere that he specifically wants to go. I think Davantae is going to get traded wherever the Raiders want him to go, and for all we know, that could be Carolina if Carolina gave up a second round pick.